this phrase, ghetto but useful, actually, at my startups in the past, it's always been a sign, like this big-ass sign everywhere, right? I think the equivalent of it at like Facebook is done is better than perfect, and there's all sorts of like iterations. But you know, everything. What we tell our portfolio, what I just always say is like everything should be ghetto but useful, right? So anyway, so just before we start, sorry, those colors. That's all right. Just before we start, like just a quick history of like product dev. You know, and this is kind of from the perspective of not only me being a founder, but also for me being on the VC side now. Like product dev 1.0, which I would argue is like everything, let's just say 10 years ago and prior, was really capital dependent, right? You had to raise a lot of money. You had to buy servers. You had to go figure out where to put them. You'd have to go get some bandwidth. And then if you like, then you could start to code, and then you could go launch something, right? And then like 2004-ish, maybe, I think, like Red Hat shows up. Then you got Product Dev 2.0, I would argue, which is like the era of open source, where now you don't have to like worry about those .NET stacks anyway. You still got to buy servers and stuff, but you don't have to go buy like those Windows NT licenses, which would cost you arm and a leg. And then like 2006, 2007, cloud computing becomes available. Right, so Product Dev 3.0 is you can actually just hit a button and a server starts up somewhere, and you can now just deploy your code. And then, like today, I'd argue that we're sort of at this like 4.0 stage, which is, you know, you've got the cloud, you've got like laptops that can do arguably more than anything else, but most importantly, certain languages like programming languages have become so easy, so powerful, and so fast that you can actually crank prototypes out in hours. And so actually in the VC context, what that means is that what used to cost us just figuratively $5 million to build and get off the ground 10 years ago, arguably today costs $5 grand or less, right? And that's a big shift. You saw this slide sort of earlier if you were here, but in the other talk. But the point is, like, it's we're not the only ones that are saying this at 500 startups, but like a lot of early stage startups are moving in this direction, right? Try things early, see what sticks, and then keep the winners, dump the losers. And frankly, that's what's happening here with TLabs, right? And it's happening with every VC around the world. Even that's what our model is: invest in a lot of early stage startups, kill off the losers quickly, and double down on the winners heavy. So just for those of you that weren't here earlier, so I'm a partner at 500 Startups. You probably may have heard anyways of my partner Dave. He's the crazy one, I'm the less crazy one. But we're the youngest VCs probably in anywhere. We're only 18 months old. We've invested in 256 companies across 15 countries now. We've got exits, we've made some money. So we're not that crazy. It's working. Like this actually is real. Okay, and before I go further, I'm going to try like startup memes from the US. I don't know if you guys follow this stuff, so I'm either going to crash and burn here or you guys are going to laugh. So just be good to me here. So like my perspective on a lot of this stuff is just driven by the companies that we've invested in, and actually, frankly, more by the companies we didn't invest in, right? So like often one of the things that we see early is that like one of the early problems is like the startup, the common startup axiom is scratch your own itch, right? And I would argue that's actually wrong. I would actually argue that you need to scratch somebody else's itch. That sounds awkward, but somebody tweet that. You need to scratch somebody else's itch. Not mine. But so like the thing is like your mom is not a valid test market. Your friend is not a valid test market, and frankly, like I'm not either, right? I would argue actually you're looking for example, if you see spreadsheets in the enterprise or the SMB, that's probably there's something in there that's likely to need some help. The way that we actually describe it, and I don't know if this is going to work very well in such a conservative society as India, but what we tell our portfolio is that like regardless of whether you're a consumer startup or an enterprise or SMB startup, In order to make money, which is what you need to survive, you need to get your users basically paid, made, related, right? Because those are the human, needs, right? Get them paid, make them money, get them made, get them more power, or get them laid, make them like sexy, make them awesome amongst their friends or their the opposite sex, if you will. But the point is that like you need to build something that other people want, right? One of the other things that we see pretty often, and this is probably not rocket science, but you guys have seen this stuff before. But like the thing is like there's always that guy that's like, man, I got this like prototype built, but I gotta just do this one more thing, and it just doesn't look pretty. It's like, you know, there's just all these like, frankly, just stupid excuses for not launching. But you know, like, why? I don't. By the way, I like that guy. He's kind of weird enough to look at. Like when I was like doing this morning, I just kept staring at him. I don't know why. It's just weird.
He's really big eyebrows.
Oh, that's me. Who said that, by the way? Okay, so the thing is, you've seen this word before. Reid Hoffman, who's the founder of LinkedIn, he's one of the GPs over at Greylock, says, like, if you aren't embarrassed by your first version, you waited too long. And I would just argue that even if you think you've built the minimal product, our experience has been that it's still there's probably still too much in it. It could be more minimal, right? Dave, actually, the way that Dave says it, says the same thing to people. He just says, like, take away features until people stop using the product or until they start bitching. Because that'll tell you where the line is drawn, right? So what I'm really saying is, for any of you that are like, does anybody here have a product that has not launched yet? Uh-oh. Public shaming coming in a minute. Let's see. Okay, so like, but I would just argue like there is this absolute need for urgency, and I know that in some industries that may not be the case. But frankly, most of us are not building like life-saving or making life-saving drugs. Most of us are not like building like buildings that people's lives like could depend on if they fall down the stairs or the elevator. You're building web apps for the most part, right? And in that context, it's better to be early and iterate than to be late. And this also, by the way, ties into that earlier fundraising stuff we talked about, which is like, this is why the rise of the angels is happening, because angels can actually support you when you just start to iterate, right? And then where you bring the VCs in is where you actually know that you've got a sustainable customer acquisition cost and a reasonable lifetime value. And VCs can pump some money into that. Anyway, the point here just to remember is that your MVP probably could be a little bit more minimum. But, the other thing we see is that that is so crazy that it's so hard to read. Can you guys read that?
Yeah.
It's actually kind of, like, there's metrics is said so many times in there that it just makes your eyes water a little bit. But we see this all the time. Actually, one of the things that sometimes we'll ask our startups or candidates anyways is we'll say, so what are the metrics that matter to you? And then what'll happen is, like, this engineer will turn his laptop around, he's super excited, and he shows you this, like, it's like his MySQL instance just like barfed into the terminal, and he's proud of it. He's like, look at what it is, and you're like, oh, well, what the fuck is that? I don't even know. So, like, the thing is, I would argue that you need 3 metrics. It's just 3 things, right? Just pick 3 metrics, whatever they might be. It might be visitors, it might be retention, it might be whatever. But just pick 3 metrics and stick to them until you have reason to believe that they're not the right ones. In general, if you're running a consumer site, I bet you signups per day is one of those metrics you want to track. I would also argue that it needs to be like over a 7-day cycle, right? So like you can kind of start to see whether trends are working or not. But the point is rather than like sit there and measure stuff over and over, it's more important that you actually pick 3 numbers just so you have a little baseline, and then just have a bias towards action, right? Just a bias towards action. Because the thing is, like, so there's this other guy, Mark Suster, who's a GP of this other fund called GRP. It's the largest fund in Southern California. One of the things he says really often is he says, Entrepreneurs make fast decisions and move forward knowing that at best, 70% of their decisions are right. At best. You're going to be wrong more than you're right. It's less important to be right all the time, and it's more important to be just moving forward. Momentum matters in an early stage startup, right? It matters. I can't tell you how much it matters. My advice to you, and like what worked well for me at my companies, is that like you want to build a startup culture of decision making based on facts. And what that really means is like at 500 startups today, I basically like backhand anybody that says I think or I feel, right? So like if anybody ever says like I think this would work or I feel like that would work, just that's crazy. Because if you think or you feel that it would work, you don't even have to say it. Just go deploy something or put up a splash page, throw some traffic at it. A good example of this, by the way, is like often you'll see companies that want to pick a name, right? And then they make this like big like thing out of it. They email all their friends and like, do you like A, B, or C? And you're like, I don't know. Like, not even your customer. What are you even talking about? Like, here's the trick to that. You create 3 AdWords campaigns or 3 AdWords ads. Everything's the same on that ad, but you just change the name at the top. And just spend, I don't know, $10, $100, whatever you want to spend, right? But just spend some money on it. By the end of the day, you're going to have a click-through rate. That's it. Which one caused people to click the most? There's your name, right? The point is have a bias towards action. Don't overthink everything. So if anybody ever says I think or I feel, and you're the person that's actually building the app, it's like shame on you because you probably should have just built that splash page, thrown some traffic at it, and then before you even opened your mouth said, hey, I think this would work. Or sorry, this is going to work, and here's why. Right? So anyway, just build your companies build a culture at your companies where your decision making is based on facts, not opinions. Right? Okay, so like, does anybody know where this image is from? I don't know. This.
Rage Comics.
Oh, I was going to say Reddit. All right. Okay, it came from all those places. You're all right. And me too. So one of the other things that we see really often, so we have a lot of companies, not a lot, but like just anecdotally, some small single-digit percentage of our companies, when we invest in them, will pivot in like 30 to 60 days. It's natural. It's what comes with this territory where we invest in the earliest stage. And the thing is, I think pivot is a word that's become like vastly overused. But the thing is, like the point is here, pivot, don't jump. And so, like, what scares me when companies pivot is when they say, like, let's say they were building like something to make apples, and then all of a sudden they're like, no, that's not working. So I'm going to go figure out how to build something that makes oranges. That's crazy. That's a jump. That's not a pivot. And that, I would argue, is riskier than actually what I believe a pivot is. And that is, a pivot to me is just basically trying to first reuse some of the code you have to maybe serve a different demographic, maybe a different vertical, whatever. Actually, a personal experience here. So I was at a startup called PBWiki in 2007. 2008, I spent about a year there. It's a friend's company. And, it was a wiki company, right? So they made wikis. And when I started, so it was like number 6 there or something like that. When we started, the challenge was they had been running for about 6 months. They had raised like $2 million. And the reason they raised that much money was because like 6,000 people signed up for wikis like in the first 3 weeks or something. And the VCs were like, oh, this is great. And then MDV and a bunch of other people pumped all this money in. Like those were, if it was easy to get money like 50 years ago, it was still easy. I mean, it was just crazy. There's so much easy money sometimes. But anyway, like we struggled to figure out like how do you actually build a sustainable business off of it. And there were all these ideas of like, well, let's try to build these other things, and let's here's this other project I want to do or whatever. And we fought it off internally. Actually, there was a guy named Jeffrey Moore who wrote a book called Crossing the Chasm, who was real close with one of our investors, Chris Ye. And actually, Jeff came in and talked to us about this. And what he actually suggested was really simple. So we had 6,000 signups. Now, mind you, these are not people that were signing up, not even using the product actively. but we did have 6,000 signups. In our mind, that data was useless. But in Jeffrey's mind, what he basically said to us was, look, what you do is you export. So we were really good about logging everything, right? So we kept all of our log files and all that stuff. So we just had to write scripts to go parse it. They said, give me a list of all the IP addresses of the signups, right? And then let's go use an intern. This was before Mechanical Turk and all those things. Let's go find an intern that'll sit there and tell us which companies these IP blocks belong to. Now, certainly some subset of them were owned by home IP providers like Comcast or Verizon in the United States. But what was interesting was 33% of the Fortune 500 in the United States were represented in those IPs. Now, that wasn't enough to actually get super excited, but it was enough to say, hey, what are these people doing? Long story short, what we learned was wikis are throwaway, right? Wikis are throwaway. But the thing is, for business collaboration, you want to charge on a per seat basis into a direct vertical. And what we learned is actually if you identified all the IP addresses, you then put the categories next to them, and then you sort by that. What we found was that for collaborating, there were only 3 verticals that liked our product. It was law firms, creative agencies, and teachers. And so to this day, actually, if you go to PBWiki, or we changed it at the time to pbworks.com, but if you go to either of those domains, you'll find that fundamentally it hasn't changed. Right? It's still, as soon as you get to that site, it's trying to figure out, are you a teacher, are you... Just remember that it's more important for you, as you think about to pivot, it's more important for you to be an inch wide and 30 miles deep than for you to be like this, everything to nobody kind of startup. So pivot, don't jump. So, do you guys have this TV show here?
Yeah.
See, I've never tried this in India. That's why I'm really worried. I'm like, will they even get this? But anyway, so another one that we see, and this is sort of repeating myself at the beginning, but it's a really important point. Far too many people, when you they'll come to you with these awesome usage stats, and then you're like, wait, but who are your users? And it's like their mom, their brother. It's his mom hitting reload on the page every day, and you're like, it's like, oh, my retention's so good. And you're like, yeah, okay, all right. This is let's go ahead and cut her out. Where's that IP? Let's just cut that one out. But the thing is, I believe that your startup journey starts the minute that you've sold something to somebody that you don't know. Just one. You find one person that you don't know to buy something from you, you're onto something, right? I can't promise you whether it's a $1 billion business or a lifestyle business. There's nothing wrong with either one of those edges. But the point is, the minute that somebody you don't know buys it, you're onto something. The point here also is, don't bullshit yourself, right? It's really easy to drink your own Kool-Aid, so you just need to force yourself to be honest. Even us at 500, this is one of the things where we're very careful about, making sure we don't even start to drink our own Kool-Aid about how we do or try to innovate in venture capital. And then sort of the last thing I want to just point out is that your first, I'm going to just say first 1,000 users, but your first X users, you should be reaching out to. Right? And this is not hard. If you've got signups on going through your website, just have an email template that just populates and just looks like it comes from you. Don't send it from a address that says no reply. Make sure it's you. Right? Now, the vast majority of people won't respond to it. Right? But the thing is, though, it's your job. You're going to find early evangelists. And I'm telling you this from experience, not only personally from my startups, actually, but I'm telling you from our own portfolio. Right? You're going to find early evangelists. You will likely save some silent cancellations. Silent cancellations being people that signed up and then for some reason fell off because they didn't understand the product or realized it wasn't for them. They will tell you. What's also really awesome is users that are really motivated to buy it will become apparent very fast. Usually their email to you will respond, it'll be something like, wow, like you actually emailed me. So here's what I was thinking, right? Like here's why I was interested in your product. So by the way, your email template should be something like, hey, this is so and so. I'm the founder of this. Would really love to hear your thoughts on why you signed up, or what you thought after you signed up. Something like that. Just make it really casual. Don't make it corporate. Don't put, for God's sakes, don't put a big signature on the bottom. Make it look like it came from you, right? And read every single one. Because it's just polite too, right? I mean, like all too often we forget as like startup, founders, we forget that like the people that sign up for our products are real people, right? Like just be good to them. So that's sort of it. You guys, if you were here earlier, you saw this thing. This is one of my favorite statements, right? Like it's so applicable to everything. And the thing, in the context of product development, the thing is, what you guys are all facing as you build and deploy your products is frankly the same thing that each of you is facing today, and frankly the same thing that all of us have faced building our businesses. Yeah, maybe a few of the principles are different, but the general principles are the same, right? And so the thing is, what I'm saying is that you can Google it, right? Like that email template I just told you. I'm not even making that up. That's something that like we learned from one of our portfolio founders, and he learned it off of some other website. And like if you just Google like startup email CEO or something like that, I bet you're gonna find it. The point is like just like it's there. You don't need like strong mentorship. Well, TLabs and everybody else is going to give you strong mentorship. The point is, you don't even need that. If you really are hungry to build your startup, the internet is available to you, and it doesn't matter whether you're in Stanford or here or down in South America. It doesn't matter anymore. So anyway, that's all I got. I'm just Paul Singh on Twitter, and I'll be sticking around for a while. All right.